What is up, guys? My name is Matt from Magic the Greatening, and today I got a really fun budget deck tech for you. Again, more budget stuff. Simic Ramp. Alright, I just want to say right now, I try to make a competitive version of this deck with stuff like Nissa, Steward elements, and maybe like an Ulamog in there. However, it just didn't turn out too well. It just became a worse version of Teamer Aetherworks Marvel deck, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to make this a budget deck tech. And it still actually turned out pretty well for a budget deck tech. We're kind of running an energy variation of it too, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about some of our early drops here. Mostly our mana dorks. These are going to be our mana dorks right here. 3 copies of Druid of the Cowl, 4 copies of Servant of the Conduit, and 4 copies of Weaver Currents. These are all our mana dorks in the deck. We have some spells that'll help us ramp as well, but these are pretty good. Honestly, would play Channeler Initiate. If you had that, go ahead and play it instead of Druid of the Cowl. But, you know, try to keep it as budget as I can, so Druid of the Cowl will do fine. And it's actually a 2-mana 1/3 body. Good for blocking early. Servant can give us both blue and green mana, which is important, and gives us energy, which is super important in this deck. And Weaver of Currents just gives us 2 more mana. We won't have to worry about too much of the green-blue. We'll be getting a lot of sources of mana in this deck, so don't worry about that. Let's go to our other creature. We're playing 3 other different types of creatures, and all of them are going to be ramped into. So we have 20 total creatures, 11 of them are ramped, and 9 of them are things to ramp into. So let's get into it. We're going to play 3 Scaled Behemoth, 3 Aetherwind Basker, and 3 Aethersquall Ancient. Scaled Behemoth is just something that's huge and can't be removed from the board. Obviously, they can counter it when it comes out, but other than that, they have to kill it with combat damage, which can be bad. You can get this out on turn 4 or 5. I think it's turn 5. I got it out once. So this thing, yeah, because turn 2 you can do Servant or Druid, and then turn 3 Weaver, and then turn 4 you can actually get Scaled Behemoth out, which is really, really good. The combo of the Servant of the Conduit to Weaver of Currents, on turn 4 you can actually get 7 mana stuff out, which is important for us because we're playing a whole bunch of 7-drops. You know, Aethersquall Ancient and Aetherwind Basker. Aetherwind Basker is just more energy. It gets us energy, and you can use energy to pump it. And it has trample, which is really good, so that thing can get really big for us. Aethersquall Ancient is part removal, part giant 6/6 flyer that also gives us energy. Definitely wanted to play a few copies of that in this deck. Let's get to the spells. Most of it is going to be things we need to use to ramp. We're going to play 4 Attune with Aether. Probably saw that coming. 3 Bounty of the Luxa. Card's actually really, really good. And 4 copies of Pyramid of the Pantheon. Alright, so when I started making this deck, Attune with Aether was a no-brainer for me. Bounty of the Luxa and Pyramid of the Pantheon, I was very skeptical about. I didn't think they'd be that good, but they actually turned out to be pretty good. Pyramid of the Pantheon, yeah, you gotta sink 6 mana into it before it can turn on, but once this thing is on, you have so much mana, it is ridiculous. You can basically, I've had it where a turn where I played an Aetherwind Basker and an Aethersquall Ancient on the same turn because I had 2 of these things online. It's absolutely ridiculous. And Bounty of the Luxa draws us cards and gives us mana. Or, you know, each other turn it'll switch, which is really good because once we get all our ramp creatures out and once we put out our big creatures, our hand will be empty and we will need stuff to draw cards. And Bounty of the Luxa can do that for us. Let's go to the other 2 different non-creature spells we're playing. We're going to play 3 copies of Confiscation Coup. More energy stuff, can take some of their big stuff from them. Maybe they got an Ulamog, and go ahead and bring that on our side. It's actually not very uncommon to use this to get an Ulamog. I'm not kidding. We do get quite a bit of energy with this deck. And then 2 copies of Sandwurm, Convergence. I know people don't like this card. It's an 8 mana enchantment, and some people are sideboarding in things like Forsake the Worldly for Liliana's Mastery, and that can hit this easy. But if they're not running Enchantment Hate, which, you know, outside of that, Forsake the Worldly, most people aren't, this thing will stay. And now flying things can't attack you and you just create a 5/5 worm every turn. That is like exactly what we want. We don't have to draw, you know, top deck into a big creature. This will automatically put big creatures out for us. It'll protect us from aerial attacks. It's perfect for this deck. Lands, we're just going to play 24. 24 seems a little bit low for how many, like, 6, 7, 8 drops we're playing. But there is a lot of ways to ramp. It is not hard at all to get 7, 8 mana by turn 4 or 5. So 12 forests, 12 islands. It's simple as that. Onto the sideboard, and I try to keep this as budget as I could. You can obviously make, you know, upgrades to this deck, stuff like lands and other things like that. But the sideboard, we're playing mostly removal in here, and some other things to get around, what's it called? To get around, like, control matchups. So we're going to actually play 3 copies of Engulf the Shore. This is actually a really good card, especially if you're not playing a whole bunch of the expensive dual lands, because you can have like 4 or 5 islands out. You can clear out their entire board, and you just keep your Aethersquall Ancients, your Aetherwind Baskers, your Scaled Behemoths will stay on the board. So that is very, very good. We're also going to play 2 more Sandwurm Convergence in the sideboard. You can take that route if you're playing a like blue-red control or a mono-blue deck. This card actually does pretty well against that, because things like Essence Scatter can't hit a Sandwurm Convergence. Things like Negate can, but, you know, that's something we're just going to have to deal with. We're also going to play 4 Spring to Mines against control matchups, because this can draw us cards, and it's not a creature they can remove from the board. So things like a Druid of the Cowl, if you're playing like a blue-red control, like a counter burn deck, they can just take out your Druid of the Cowl or your Servant of the Conduit. You're losing your ramp. You're losing your creatures. They're feeling like they're getting efficient. But Spring to Mind can change that because of the spell, and if they don't counter it, you still get that ramp you need, and the Aftermath can draw you cards, so that is pretty good. We're also going to play 3 copies of Cancel for counter spells against, again, things like Aetherworks Marvel decks. We need things to counter. And then we're also going to play 3 copies of Dissenter's Deliverance for things against like Mardu vehicles. Sometimes you'll see it as like a Scrap Heap Scrounger in a mono black zombies deck. But yeah, Dissenter's Deliverance definitely worth playing in this format. There's a lot of good artifacts out there. That's it for this deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. It's really, really, really basic and simple, but it's kind of efficient. I'm actually kind of growing on this deck. Originally, I wasn't playing any energy in this deck, but once you get the Aethersquall Ancient or an Aetherwind Basker out, things start turning well for you. Now, I know the Aetherwind Basker costs 3 green, but again, getting a whole bunch of green sources is nothing to be worried about. You have a Tune with Aether to fix your mana. You have things like Druid of the Cowl that tap for green. You have things like Servant of the Conduit that tap for anything. Bounty of the Luxa gets you a green. It's not too hard to hit 3 greens, and we have a few double blues in here, which isn't, again, hard to hit. Things like Servant of the Conduit, Bounty of the Luxa, Tune with Ether, all fix your mana and stuff like that. So I've never really ran into mana problems, which is good in a ramp deck. So that's it, guys, for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.